Hello, Bucks fans. Welcome into JS Online. I'm Kassidy Hill, joined by Jim Owczarski here at Pfizer Forum, where things are clearing out pretty quick, Jim, after the Bucks fall in the first round, an unceremonious exit in a gentleman's sweep by the Miami Heat, a 128-126 final in overtime. I'm just going to start kind of off the top. Giannis Antetokounmpo and Mike Budenholzer were both asked, is this season a failure? They had varying answers. You cover this team day in and day out. Is this season a failure, in your opinion?
I mean, look, I get the athlete mindset, right? And Giannis says no because you can't win essentially every season. Mike Budenholzer says disappointment, right? Look, if you don't meet expectation, and the expectation is to compete for a championship, I don't know if losing in the first round meets that for sure. I'm hemming and hawing, Cassidy, because I'm not also someone who says like things are failures, but they definitely, it was bad. The fact that we're wrapping this up after a 58-win season, they're only the third team in the 7-game playoff, fourth team in the 7-game playoff era to lose in the first round as a 1 seed. That's not great. And the only ones that do it in 5 games, they didn't even win a second game. Giannis said this is the worst postseason ever for him in that way. So is the worst ever a failure? I mean, it could be semantics.
Yeah, exactly. It could also be your definition of the word. Let's hear a little bit from Giannis on his opinion on whether or not the season was a failure.
There's no failure in sports. There's good days, bad days. Some days you are able to be successful, some days you're not. Some days it's your turn, some days it's not your turn. And that's what sports is about. You don't always win. Some other people's going to win. And this year, somebody else is going to win. Simple as that. We're going to come back next year, try to be better, try to build good habits, try to play better, not have a 10-day stretch with playing bad basketball. And hopefully we can win a championship. So 50 years from 1971 to 2021 that we didn't win a championship, it was 50 years of failures? No, it was not. It was steps to it, and we were able to win one. Hopefully we can win another one.
Jim, you also asked Giannis if he wanted to guard Jimmy Butler more, which I thought was a really interesting question, and he gave you a very honest answer. He said yes, and then expounded upon it a little bit. Jimmy finished with 42 points tonight, I believe 8 rebounds, including the shot that sent it to overtime. We watched it live, and every time I watch it afterwards, I still don't know how it happened. I honestly thought the Bucks season right there might have ended on an and one, but instead it went to overtime where Jimmy, I think, was the only Heat starter left on the floor during overtime. All of that being said, did the Bucks handle Jimmy incorrectly, or is that just what he's going to do?
Look, in retrospect, you can say the fact that very little was done outside of one-on-one defense with Jrue Holiday for the most part. Obviously, Jrue didn't guard him the entire time. There were switches. Jimmy wanted Giannis in a couple of those situations in Game 5 and feeling he could use his quickness to an advantage. In Game 4, the 56-point effort, Cassidy, Jimmy Butler gave it to Chris Middleton and Brook Lopez and Giannis. And in Game 1, when he had scored 30-plus, he gave it to Wesley Matthews and Jay Crowder and Joe Ingles. So, I mean, it's Jrue drew the assignment, and he is, I think most NBA players would say, the best individual defender in basketball. If that's the decision, it's kind of hard to say that's the wrong decision. But after 5 games, when clearly it just wasn't working, in retrospect, you can say maybe Giannis should have had a little more time on it. What does that mean? What does it look like? Giannis was hurt for a lot of games, clearly limited the last 2, Cassidy. So, if he says he would have liked to, okay. Would it have worked? At this point, I don't know if anything would have worked.
Let's hear from Giannis, though, on what he said about possibly wanting to guard Jimmy a little bit more in this series.
Out of respect, you gotta let the coach, make the adjustment, and we have our best defender on him. But obviously this conversation with Jrue, whenever he gets tired, I can, take him. But he's so competitive, plays so hard, and he wanted to take the challenge. But at the end of the day, I wish I could. I wish I could guard more.
Okay, Jim. They missed 17 free throws, including one from Drew Holiday with 2.1 seconds left in regulation that would have wrapped the game up. Wesley Matthews said afterwards that tells the story right there. But there were other factors. There were timeouts that were taken off the court and not used. There were, different assignments. If you had to pinpoint not just tonight's loss, but maybe the series loss overall, what would you kind of focus on?
Yeah, it's, unfortunately, Kassidy, for a team that only lost 6 times between January 16th and April 5th, they lost 4 times in a 2-week period. And it all came down to the things that when the Bucks lost those 6 times, and then the other times it's free throws. They shot 71% this series. That's about their season average. Yes, Giannis had something to do with that, but Drew missed a big one. Brook Lopez missed a couple free throws. They missed free throws all series long. That's what they do. They turn the ball over 61 times in the 4 losses, Kassidy, for 88 Heat points. Guess what? That's what they do when they lose the game. So it's never just one thing. Unfortunately for the Bucks during the regular season, if that happened, they tightened it up. They won the next 1, 2, 3, 5, 16. They never tightened any of that up in this playoff, Kassidy, and that's a credit to the Heat in a way. And again, the Bucks just weren't able to self-correct the problems that they had all season long.
Is that surprising with what you know of this team?
Yes, because while those numbers aren't a shock to anyone who watched the Bucks play all 82 games, the fact that they weren't able to find a defensive solution as the best team in basketball, best defense in basketball, the fact that they weren't able to generate enough offense when needed. One of I believe the highest scoring team in basketball, Kassidy, since January 16th, like 123 points a game, completely flipped. Miami was the team doing that. The turnovers at times, this team was really good. I think 2 turnovers early in game 4, and then the floodgates opened. In this game, turned it over early, tightened up. They went a huge stretch without giving the ball away to build their lead. And then they gave the ball away. That, Kassidy, might actually be part of the lack of focus Giannis talked about post-game, when he said the Heat were intent on beating the Bucks, whereas the Bucks were thinking about winning a championship. And after game 1, after game 3, veterans on this team said they didn't match that Heat intensity, and they couldn't really figure out why. And maybe Giannis just was able to put the correct words to it.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I thought that was one of his most telling statements. Let's hear from Giannis on that entire answer on the difference in the Heat and the Bucks in this series.
But at the end of the day, I feel like they were playing to beat us, and we were playing to win the championship, which I don't understand it. Like, you could see they were playing with so much energy, so much passion. We were playing together, tough, making it tough for us. I think we were just a little bit ahead of ourselves, to be honest with you. But at the end of the day, it's basketball. We give them credit. They kicked our butts. Gotta feel it.
Okay, Jim, where do the Bucks go from here? And include in that some housekeeping notes if you can. Like, I know there's some player contracts that are coming up. Like, what does their biggest focus need to be this offseason?
There is so much with that, Kassidy. So the Reader's Digest version, Chris Middleton has a player option, which means he can opt in or opt out, become a free agent. Brook Lopez is a free agent. Whatever happens there, the decisions need to be made. Those 2 are going to be very expensive. Chris Middleton's going to be 32 at the start of next year. Brook Lopez is 35. The new CBA was ratified. We're not going to bog anyone down with that, but it's important because the Bucks can no longer just spend money, and with the only repercussion being a luxury tax. There are far more penalties in place with far wide-ranging implications among roster construction, who they can and can't sign, draft picks they may lose or be frozen or can't trade. I mean, look, Cassie, there's a new co-owner in Jimmy Haslam. There's a new governor in Wes Edens. He hasn't been a governor for 4 years. They said there's a commitment to winning, but how does this result define that commitment? They haven't won in the postseason. So how do they view that in terms of the dollars that are going to be needed? How does John Horst view that in terms of the real handcuffs that the league and the union agreed to put on teams like the Bucks? So there's a lot here to dive into, and unfortunately for Milwaukee, they're doing it a lot sooner than they thought. Because honestly, Cassidy, if we're doing this wrap-up video after a loss in the finals or the conference finals, let alone a championship, maybe those decisions are easier. You just, hey, we deal with it in 6 years and 4 years and 3 years, and we just run it back as best we can. Right. I don't know if that's an option at this point. Maybe it is. Maybe they're going to do it no matter what. But it's hard to look at these last 2 seasons together, Cassidy, and see a descent from the championship. And is that the trend? Is 2 years a trend of postseason, or do they look at it a little more holistically? We'll see.
Giannis did make the point, he said a couple of years ago, we swept the Heat. They came back, they made the changes they needed to make because of that loss. Came back the next year where they were the number 1 seed. And he said, now it's our turn to do the same. So those changes could possibly start coming very, very soon here. Whatever does happen, Jim will have full coverage for you on JS Online. Jim, go sleep in tomorrow. Do you at least get a little tiny bit of a break?
No, we'll see. Look, again, it starts. I mean, technically, Brooke Lopez and Chris Middleton's reps can meet with John Horst tomorrow or today. Later today, if they so choose. So, yeah, I think everything now about the future of this team begins right now.
Right now. Well, Jim will be on top of all of it. We're going to let him take a nap at least. He at least can have that. And then we'll have full wrap-up coverage for you from this loss and the Bucks postseason short run overall on JS Online. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you next time.